I remember doing staff training, and there was a bad hotelier situation. They were acting it out, but of course it was so arbitrary because I remember the trainer would do, okay, he'd just go, oh, don't care. That's the wrong way to do it. Then someone would come up and go, I don't complain about my room, and he'd go, well, you can have your money back, and do you want to stay here for free? Yeah, it's the right way to do it. I go, brilliant. Well, that's easy then. And so we sort of spoofed that.
It's definitely my favourite episode out of both series. It just had that. It was that sort of. It was like, you know, when some shows they all go on holiday together. It was like that, but almost without leaving the office environment. It just put everyone in a slightly different position.
Likewise for us, when we were filming it, it was almost like a holiday. It was a different setting, and we knew this was going to be a different type of episode. And Brent gets out his guitar, and it was just a fun episode to do.
I was watching that when I went, oh, this is maybe the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, because it's set up where somebody's come in to help everybody in the office work together, and David Brent wants to be in charge of that, and he's talking over the guy.
Vincent Franklin, who was the guest on that episode, is the guy who ran the seminar, was brilliant foil for him as well, because he hit the ground running. He really got it. I think he was fantastic because he totally got the style, and he just, you know, he was part of the team immediately.
I knew as soon as I read the script, again, that the line when they asked me, what's my fantasy, two lesbian sisters, probably, I'm just watching. I knew that was a funny line. I couldn't wait to deliver it, and you know, I think it works out just right. Everyone's reaction to it is perfect.
I think there's been a rape up there. It was one of the funniest things I've ever had to keep a straight face at by a mile. That was horrendous, and everyone in the room, it was the same thing. Everybody, because even though you've read the script and you've done the read through and it's like the first time you've ever heard. It's like he just made it up in that moment. It's such an awful thing to say.
I think that still might be my favourite line to shout. There's been a rape up there. Don't know why.
Again, Brent has to win at all costs.
Yeah, it was no longer anything to do with anything except Brent getting the upper hand.
I just hadn't ever heard a line like that. And I certainly hadn't ever had to keep a straight face to a line like that. People have quoted that to me, like, you know, for a start, I don't say it. Secondly, don't say that in the street. You know what I mean? I think there's been a rape up there. Don't say that in the street to me, not even my line.
We had so much fun as well making the little sort of training film that they're watching, starring Peter Purvis. Because again, they hours sat watching these videos that were 20 years old.
We did things that we thought no one would noticed that, but we said we didn't care. Someone will somewhere one day, and so we love going into the minutiae of the detail. And Peter Purvis said, "This isn't a spoof." He said, "This is the real thing." He said, "I've done hundreds of these. They're exactly like it." Even to the bad joke at the end when the guy's looking at the.
We got excited about the music. Do you remember the? Yeah, because it was all of those things. We were sort of obsessive about it because we wanted it to feel real, and we kept going, there's going to be at least 1 million people. Surely you're going to recognise this. If there's 1 million people who recognise that this is just what it's like in offices, then we've found an audience, you know. And as it turned out, there was a lot more people.
There's nothing wrong with playing a guitar and wanting to be a pop star, but when you're 40 years old and in charge of an office and during a training day, it's just inappropriate. And of course, what we did was let it spin off these other ambition and the delusional ideas that he was going to actually, put some drum and bass shit on it and like modern it up, you know. So it's another thing of this guy thinking he's rock and roll and getting it, tragically wrong. You know,
he's a Spinal Tap disciple, and he knows very clearly the lesson of a good comedy song. It has to be a good song, you know. Neil Innes, it's like they have to be buyable as this person really does think this is a good song. He really can play. He can genuinely play. It doesn't mean what he's going to write is going to be any good, you know. Perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
I think that episode as well has a few elements where our kind of obsessiveness with the world that we created, it's just so much fun just in discussing the tiny little things, like the name of former bands. The name of Brent's former band being Foregone Conclusion amused us for ages. Because I think it's instantly, when you can imagine him saying, "Hi, we're Foregone Conclusion," you can picture who those other bandmates are, the kind of sound they're making. And somehow, little stuff like that is what kind of tickled us for ages, you know, not necessarily the big jokes, but little things like the fact that the training video is called Who Cares Wins. It just amused us.
The Tim and Dawn story is completely beautiful, completely excellent, the slowness with which it operates throughout the series. I mean, you do find romance in the strangest places. For me, the great romantic film is Spinal Tap, the relationship between the two members of the band. It has an absolutely classic rom-com format, and you can see the same feuding, the same parting, the same coming back together again. And the romance in The Office was almost as unexpected and beautifully constructed, beautifully written. If there hadn't been anything else, it would have been worth sitting through the 12 episodes just for that story.
Don and Tim's relationship is the heart of that show, you know? And I think that that's also very brave of Ricky Gervais to do, you know? His big romantic moment didn't come until the Christmas special, until the very, very end, when you went, oh my God, he's met a girl that likes him for who he is, and maybe he's gonna be okay. That took years for them to get to, and instead, they wrote all of that stuff for other actors, which that's one thing you'll very rarely see.
We always wanted to do a comedy with an emotional journey, particularly a romance. We knew that nothing hooked people quite like that, more so than the overall plot, even more so than the jokes. We cut jokes out. We threw them on the floor because we thought it would interrupt with the romance or the realism. So there were things more important than the comedy for us.
Of course people were rooting for Tim, you know what I mean? Of course they were. Because he listened to Dawn, and he had empathy for Dawn and cared about what Dawn wanted as opposed to just about what Lee wanted, which is kind of what Lee cared about. And again, you know, I suppose that's probably 95% of the humans on Earth. You know, we're all quite selfish, and we're all doing things for our own reasons, and, you know, that's all kind of believable, I think, you know. Again, it wasn't like he was a monster, Lee, it was just he was kind of a bit uncaring. Not caring enough, you know, for the audience, I think. The audience knows that Dawn is a precious thing that needs a bit more tending.
The time they shared together was always being observed, and so it meant that we had to be, in a way, as writers, more subtle about how their romance blossomed. And I think that it allowed people to invest in it even more because it was charged. It was like, I've always thought of it as like a kind of Victorian
Seething.
drama where, you know,
Absolutely.
social convention means you mustn't touch the other person because...
So we had to calibrate everything down. So now people aren't falling into bed, they're not even kissing. So, you know, a kiss is huge, and a touch becomes important, and a look becomes important. And that was one of the first ways we let people know that there might be something between Tim and Dawn. And we were like, how can we do this? Because they're being filmed and she's got a boyfriend. And we just realised all you had to do is have Tim look at her when she's not looking.
They must have hours of tape of me just looking over to that bloody desk, and then them just picking little bits that they want, because, you know, as with a lot of things like that, you tend to do it a long time and then pick up little bits that you want.
The mockumentary, it works very well with that. It works very well with subtlety, because the mockumentary allows us to pick up on the fact that, and the fact there's no voiceover, as there might be in an older documentary, allows us to pick up on the fact that Tim is looking over at Dawn and a glance has passed between them and the camera's just picked it up, or whatever. It's very subtly and lightly done.
Maybe people looked at some of us and our characters and were frustrated because you did think, right, Dawn should be with Tim should be with Dawn, Lee should probably get lost, and everyone should do this, that and the other. But I think one of the reasons that I would have enjoyed watching it if I'd been a viewer was that the fact of it is the majority of us don't necessarily think that we can achieve certain things, and I know for me, I have to really push myself to be brave enough to go and do something that you think is like taboo or possibly out of my reach. So it takes courage to do that.